Hey listeners, super sorry about the distortion at the beginning of this episode. It clears up about 3.5 minutes in.
This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Paul Charney is visiting from way out west, but he's not jet lagged because he's been in New York, and I don't know why I'm sharing that. It's the first thing I think I said to him.
That's fine. Yeah, you were like, "Why?" You were very clear. You were like, "So why are you here?"
Yeah.
Was your first question.
No, I didn't.
It wasn't good enough to visit you.
Did you think I meant at this place right now?
I don't know what it meant.
I was like, why are you in Atlanta?
But it did come off as why are you?
What are you doing here?
Yeah, like
I don't get this.
You might want to turn around.
So Paul is the door works both ways. Yeah. As you know, Paul's at Funworks out in California. I want to talk about what that means. I want the listeners to understand this changing in the way we think about developing insight. I think that's kind of the way I kind of frame it based on the research I've done on the interwebs. This came to us. Listeners, let me let you into my workshop for 5 seconds. So, believe it or not, I know that I have maybe, at this point, I think we've doubled our listenership to half a dozen, and I appreciate all 6 of you. But for some reason, there are people out in the world in public relations who feel like it'd be a valuable thing to put some of the folks they know on the podcast. And that Carrie Jewell reaches out to me. I believe this was early August. And we're recording this now in mid-November.
That sounds about right.
And I always say, well, is this guy going to be in Atlanta? I mean, he looks like an interesting resume, yes, so he is here. And I so appreciate your taking the time to come in here and talk today. We just gave a quick tour of the school. So in case you haven't done your homework and haven't looked up who Paul is, he went to Brown University, worked at a place called Black Rocket as a copywriter. I'm going to go through this real quick and then we'll go back. Grant, Scott, and Hurley as a copywriter.
Yeah.
Where was that?
That was also in San Francisco.
Okay.
They actually had a really cool office in what used to be a firehouse.
Oh, that's cool. Did they have a pole?
There was a pole. You were not allowed to use it, but
you sounded so sad.
I know it was just like this. Really, why even leave this in here?
You sound so sad when you said that.
Yeah, well, it was a missed opportunity, or for them it was, and they saw it as a missed lawsuit,
a missed
lawsuit,
legal opportunity, exactly.
So yeah, that was a fun place.
All right, so talk to me about Black Rocket.
So Black Rocket was where.
First of all, let's talk about this. Let's just do this.
Okay, let's talk. Yeah.
How did you get your start? Did you have a portfolio coming out of undergrad? You went to a place called Black Rocket. Talk a little bit about how the career started. And let me just say to the listeners, let me give a lay of the land. As you can tell, I don't prepare these intros. He had a long career. I'm going to say he's had a long career. Over 7 years. Of the heart of the career was at Goodby Silverstein and Partners, and now he is a founder at a place called Funworks out in Oakland.
Yes,
we're going to get to the Funworks story, but I want to go back to how you get. One thing I really want to hit on is.
How I got where I got.
The transition from being a creative to kind of owning a shop. But let's talk first about getting your start in the business. Because as we're walking around the school, we're talking a little bit about how people enter the business now. And you didn't have this sort of ad school training. So how did you come out of undergrad into an agency? Yeah.
So my story is a little... I grew up in New York City. I went to college in Rhode Island. And then I came back to New York City for a year and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life.
That happened to me.
And New York is a really hard place for that.
Yeah.
So I went out to San Francisco with a bunch of friends. And this is so long ago. I tell my employees, it was so long ago because they're like, why'd you choose San Francisco? Because it was affordable.
It was affordable. Yeah, 22 years ago.
Yeah, it was affordable in 1996. So... that's how long ago it was. And so I went out there actually with a bunch of friends to do comedy.
Okay.
I actually didn't go out. I did not.
Comedy is improv or stand-up?
It was sketch comedy.
Okay.
And so with a little improv here and there. But it was mostly sketch comedy, and formed a group with some of my friends from college. And But obviously that doesn't pay.
Mm-hmm.
So I needed to, I'd done comedy in college, but I needed to make some money. And so through various channels, someone said they started an ad agency called Black Rocket, and they needed an intern.
Oh, there you go.
So I started as an intern who I was covering phones.
Oh, wow.
I was cleaning dishes.
Wow.
And they were a very small company at that point.
But at that point you kind of had this sense that you could write things, like that you could.
I like to write.
You could make things.
I like to. Yeah, exactly.
You weren't discovering it because they would hire you. You were in there because like, wow, that would be a cool job.
It was absolutely, and you know, people of my age, I didn't know a lot about advertising, the business, other than what I saw on 30 Something or an old reference of Tom Hanks's first show called Bosom Buddies.
Right. Did you ever see the show Trust Me?
Yes.
That show got it right.
Yeah. It did.
That show was pure Schadenfreude for me.
I do think Mad Men also got it right.
In some ways, yeah.
I mean, well, you know what? Mad Men was a really helpful thing for me to tell people what I do.
That helps for sure.
Like, I was like, no, they're like, really? It's like that? And I'm like, unfortunately, yeah, it's like that.
So when you got the job, were you learning about the industry? Were you had aspirations? What were your goals?
It was great. I didn't even really, my goals was really to have a job to your point, in an industry that seemed somewhat interesting.
Yeah.
And it was a small company. Black Rocket did Do Your Yahoo. So they were like on the beginning fronts of like getting all this .com stuff.
That's cool.
And they valued humor. So that was really lucky.
They did a Yahoo.
Yep.
That one, yeah.
Yeah, they did the yodel and all that stuff. And I got really lucky that it was people that valued humor. They were an offshoot of Goodby Silverstein and Hal Riney.
Oh my God, so many Goodby Silverstein.
Yeah, it's a lot of offshoots.
Yeah.
Jeff and Rich are all of our parents. And I got exposure because it was at a small place to every part of advertising.
That's really great.
You know what I mean? Like they didn't have a creative department.
You knew nothing. It's perfect.
I knew nothing. Yeah, and really they saw that I even, to be honest, at first I was like really interested in the strategy part. Like I had just come from college and like I was like, oh, this is how you use anthropology and sociology. Right, like
the two things I wish I'd studied in college, I've mentioned on the podcast.
Oh, really?
If I'd like to do over again, I would have been an anthropology and/or sociology major.
I actually had taken a couple of those courses, so then I was like, oh, this is. But I didn't know what it was for. Right? Like I just sit in these classes, like this is interesting.
They asked the right.
I don't know what to do with this.
But they asked the right questions. Why? Well, why did they act like that? Like, well, how did that happen? How did that community form? Why are they in that part of the world? Why do they eat that? Why are they dressed that way?
Yeah, just go deeper. Yeah. Don't accept it.
Yeah, don't accept it.
Question it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so when I was at Black Rocket, it was, and I'm sorry, I don't want to take too long, but it was very informative for me. I got exposure to all the disciplines.
This is your ad school. This
was my ad school.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. At Black Rocket was my ad school, and I got really lucky.
Are you still friends with anybody from there?
Yeah, absolutely. The three or four partners there I still keep in touch with.
So you were there in 97.
Actually, actually how I heard about the circus was through Dan Morales, who was one of the, I think he must have been one of the earlier students because I remember he started at Black Rocket in 98.
Yeah, he would have been one of the people who left the school in the 10 years before I got here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so that was how I had actually heard of, I didn't even know there were ad schools.
Right.
And then when he came, he's like, no, and then I saw his book and I was like, holy shit, this is what a book looks like.
That's really cool.
And that was really exciting. And I learned, and Bob Kerstetter and Steve Stone were my creative mentors. And just so you know how I got hired, as I started off in account services.
Mm-hmm, so did I.
And yeah, I think a lot of people, it's funny, I've heard that story quite a bit. They came and saw one of my comedy shows. And and I remember coming into work the following Monday, and and Bob Kerstetter, one of the partners and creative directors, he sits me down. He's like, I must have been 20, I don't know, 23, 24. And he just said, so what do you want to do? Okay. And what's so funny is I just instinctively just was like, I don't know. I'm figuring out, like, I don't know, maybe someday make movies, or like, I don't know. I really like the comedy stuff, but I don't know. He's like, he just stops. He's like, hold on. I don't care what you want to do with your life. What do you want to do here? And I was like, oh, I think I might like to write more than do the account stuff. He's like, okay, let's try that then.
I'm not your dad.
Yeah, it was such a good moment and reminder that, oh, right, this is a job.
That is so great. But as we're talking, it's like, that's what comedy kind of is, anthropology, right? It's being observant and asking questions and never taking anything at face value, and then and that to me is sort of like, that's the DNA of a smart planner or account person, or even anyone doing communication. You have to understand every part of that communication. And
this is an argument I get into with clients or with other people, or even when people perceive Funworks, take it in. And a lot of stuff we do is humorous. But, everyone's like, well, we're hoping to do something more emotional, not funny. And I'm like, those are I was like, you understand that those are the same thing. Mm-hmm. Like, humor is an emotion. Why people like it is because they're emotionally connecting. They're not rationally connecting. Yes, they feel something.
Right. I've often said that your job as a creative is to make someone feel your strategy without knowing that they just read something with your strategy.
Exactly.
Or saw something with your strategy.
And humor is a great way to do that.
Sure.
And like, people are
it's the one that makes you feel good. It creates what is it that happens?
The hormones that are released and all that stuff. I can't remember.
But that's real. It's not magic.
It's not magic, and it's
magical.
It's magical, and remembering that a lot of our job in this industry is to make sure that people remember things. Something gets stuck.
I just want to go straight to the point.
Okay. Oh, sorry. No.
Okay. No, that wasn't you. Fuck no.
Okay.
No. Straight to the point
I have a guilt complex.
of how Funworks comes to the insight. So, because we're dancing around a little bit, but I think that where you are now is you've leveraged this truth that we're talking about, and turned it into sort of the core truth of your brand, right? So, talk a little bit about how I want to read this from AdAge. All right,
okay.
I'm just going to read it verbatim. So, AdAge Small Agency of the Year last year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's pretty great.
That's cool.
I'm going to read this directly from the AdAge article. It says, Funworks' innovative approach to the creative process centers around, quote, helping employees and clients learn to reach the flow state, a term in psychology that means one is focused, energized, and enjoying the work, what some might call being in the zone. And it says, whatever it's called, the work seems to prove it's effective. So talk to me a little bit about finding that flow state, and maybe it might be helpful to talk about how ideas in our careers, your career and mine, how do they die and become ruined? Is that the segue into it?
Yeah, that's a really good. Okay, Now, can I ask you a question? Are you referring to ideas that we thought were good?
Oh, that's a great question. So, all right, so
because the creative team, it all plays together.
The creative team is excited about an idea.
Yes.
The creative director buys into it. And
yes.
It's presented to the client.
Yes.
Because we've gone back from what the client asked for based on the paper that we've all decided we're going to work off
they submitted.
Well, we've all worked off this piece of paper.
There was a strategist.
Yes. They approved the strategy. We go off. I have the benefit of having heard you talk about this. We go off.
Okay.
We go off with this piece of paper.
Yes.
And we're fired up. We've talked to the client a couple times about how fired up we are, and they're fired up. And we come in and all of the air is immediately removed from the room.
Yeah.
How does that happen? And how can we prevent that from happening?
So there's a couple of things going on there. There's multiple layers going on there. This is the essence of why I wanted to start a company and do something different. Was I got really, what you're suggesting, or what you're outlining, sorry, you're not suggesting it, it's an accurate depiction of the game Guess What's in My Head.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, we go away from you, the client.
Yep.
Based on this piece of paper, we're gonna try and interpret it. We only have one way to interpret it, which is our way, as creatives, right? We're in this room.
We feel that it's our job to interpret that creatively.
Yes. Now I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna say, so this is our interpretation. I'm asking for permission. Did I get it right? And that's sort of a strange, awkward situation if you really deconstruct it.
It's sort of fundamentally, there's a fundamental chasm.
Yes.
It's not necessarily adversarial.
No.
But it's not adversarial. It's kind of a table between the two.
And we've pretended that it's not weird.
Right.
And then it becomes adversarial.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because if we're not admitting that there's something strange in this process, then it becomes, why don't you like it?
Territorial.
Territorial.
Protective.
And then again we're losing sight of all of the real human realities, which is that for the creatives, it's so, I mean, we talk about this, and every creative has to, as you go through this job, you have to do that balance of not taking things personally, but also not completely removing yourself. Because if you do remove yourself, then the work won't be probably as good either.
It's so funny because I've had this conversation about this stuff all the time on the podcast. And I always go back to like, well, then I've got to be more resilient. Well, then I've got to realize that like when they kill my work, that's my job now to solve it better the next time. But that's all in the assumption that the only way to do it is that way.
Exactly. Yes.
Right.
It's to just go back and grind.
Yeah.
And I have, as I'm outlining or suggesting, like I do think there are major flaws in that process. Mm-hmm. And I think what happens too is there's all types of problems with like just coming in with a big reveal, and then also asking on the spot, right, what do you think? Right. What do you like this? And I had clients who just told me, like, one of the things they said is, I don't think you, and I will never forget this. He said, I don't think you know how hard it is to receive ideas.
Oh, right.
And I like hadn't thought about that. Like, and he's like, I think you know how hard it is to present. I was like, yeah, it's really hard to like share something and make sure you're understanding it and all of that. And he's like, yeah, I don't know if you understand how hard it is to receive these ideas.
God, that's really interesting.
Like, and I was like, what do you mean? He's like, I know how hard you've worked on it. I'm not stupid.
Right.
I see the bags under your eyes.
Right.
And now how do I handle that I think you missed? And I'm like, what do you mean missed? Like missed, it's not. He's like, maybe it's not on strategy. Maybe you forgot that we mentioned the tone thing. Maybe I wasn't clear about the tone thing.
Right.
And now here we are.
Well, something else.
Or something else. And he's like, I'm not saying I shouldn't have accountability. And I'm like, right, this is the problem. Wow. I don't know everything in your head.
Right.
And that's a process issue. That's not
Absolutely.
Anyone's fault. And then we get mad at them for not telling us about the conversation they had with Stacy.
Exactly.
2 weeks ago. And
or Stacy was never involved until today.
Stacy's a swoop and pooper.
All right.
And so that's also
swoop and poop. So she shows up and she says no.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And everyone's like, where has she been?
Right.
And in their defense, they're like, she's been also in Asia trying to convince everyone to like, she's busy.
Right. Yeah. She has a job.
She has a job. But still, how do we change this process? Because what you laid out there, like that happens all the time. And it's, and there are articles about it. Like clients don't know what they're doing, or from the client perspective, like agencies aren't listening, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's the same story over and over again.
It's interesting too, because I interpreted what you said about clients don't know how to receive. How did you say it?
No, she says, I don't think you appreciate how hard it is to receive.
How hard it is to receive it. I think there's so many components there that are difficult to even understand. One of them is I sit in class every week and people will present work. And I've been looking at fake work as a fake creative director in 3 or 4 classes a week for 15 years. So I'm pretty good at, not much, but I'm pretty good at being able to say, there's the nugget. That's the one. And they'll present work and and I'll always ask the class for reaction. So what do you guys think? And they always like the quickest, they often will like the one that's not the best one up there because they're not trained to understand the potential in an idea. Mm-hmm. They're not trained to see what might be more fertile. And it's no criticism of them, and it's no criticism of a client that can't understand fundamentally that this right now is making you uncomfortable for the right reason. So they might not be able to tell you it was wrong, but they might not also be trained to understand what is right. All of it comes from not being involved.
I'll take it even a step further. We can talk a little bit about it at some point, but there's a web app that we've developed a proprietary thing called Gut Check to help with this. And this has been sort of game changing for us, or helpful. But it's based on the thing that we did look and see, and we looked at the top 30 MBA programs. MBA, business programs. No class isn't given feedback.
Oh my God.
0.
Right. Wow.
So they're not, and I'm like, but how often do they have to do that? Even forget an agency.
Right.
Like a review or whatever, or just their employees coming up to them and asking.
Right.
Like that means,
wow,
that's on the job training. And so then let alone a class and how to take in new ideas.
Right.
And give feedback.
Right. Well, it's like a focus group. It's like you're asking people to have opinions.
On what?
That they've never had to formulate. They've never had to articulate an opinion on a commercial ever.
I've had so as we developed Gut Check, one of the things we had is, in talking about this feedback thing, I did have a social psychologist tell me, like, I didn't realize it, but the worst thing you can do after sharing like an hour's worth of ideas is then say, what do you think?
What do you think? Right.
Because she's like, that is a completely unfair question.
Mm-hmm.
What do I think about what?
Right.
What do I think about? Are you asking me, do I like it, or what do I think about this? What are we talking? You know, like, right. And so now they're grabbing anything. And so, yes, there are more experienced clients who have learned the game.
There's so many ways to fuck that up.
But even they are still like walking into a bear trap.
Right. That's right.
And
that's fascinating.
And that's what you did. That scenario, that moment in time, is a real choke.
The presentation moment?
That presentation feedback moment is a real choke on the process. And I don't know if I don't think it's anyone's fault. I think it's a really terrible scenario. And then how about this? Is there anything less inspiring than sharing creative ideas in a PowerPoint?
No, there's nothing less inspiring.
But that's the expectation.
Right.
Like, that's like,
dude,
did you feel anything? Well, I don't know, because Cheryl's on her phone. And, like...
My head is reeling now, because yesterday in class I showed your awesome spot for...
for the Watchdogs
For
thing?
Watchdogs?
Yeah.
And I showed it to the class at the beginning of the class, and I had set it up, admittedly badly, by talking about your agency, you, and your agency's philosophy on what we haven't gotten to yet, the solution for this, right?
Yeah.
And so I showed the spot, and I said, so what do you guys think? And the answers were like, wow, you guys are, that's not what I meant by even the question.
Yeah.
They're like, they said like, well, what I think, it sounds to me like it's every player is playable. Every character is playable. I'm like, that wasn't the question.
That wasn't what you were trying to...
The question wasn't like about casting. The question wasn't... Someone said, what does that have to do with Funworks process? I'm like, it doesn't. But isn't there a way to minimize the mistakes that you can make by not... You know what I mean? Like covering off the Cheryl and the person who's traveling and all that. So talk to me about how you guys approach solving and preventing these things.
So this is yes. Thank you. You really framed it up very well. You framed it up like the best I've seen of like understanding why we pivoted to this. Like,
well, here's the thing. I think that this is just my own commentary.
Yeah.
You get to a point in the career. You've been in a career for 20 years.
Yeah.
20 years. You have this really interesting vantage point. When we walked in here, we were talking about my wife's new DEI consultancy. You can't walk through the hall and not see the mold on the wall at 22 years in. You see what the problems are, and you face them, and you attack them because they are consistent, they're pervasive, and they're preventable.
Yes, and I think, and maybe this is sort of what your wife is going through. The myth in our industry, unfortunately, and I don't want this to deter people, the myth is that if the creative is so strong, it will win the day.
Oh God, that's not been my experience.
No, but I feel like when I came up, that's
willing ignorance.
It is
willful ignorance.
And I feel like there's an industry. I feel like that's a common theme in the industry. I think that's
by what metric is the best work? By what
exactly? Right? I know that.
It's hilarious. Everyone loves it.
It's such a brilliant fucking
Is it
freaking
running?
idea. I don't know if this is.
I've already said it a couple times.
Oh, you have? Okay, great. I can't remember. I'm right. Your students are not 8. Sorry.
Well, I started singing around my son now, so all gloves are off.
But yeah, it's just that that this idea is so fucking brilliant. Don't you see it, client? Don't you see how brilliant this idea?
Right,
And it's just the arrogance.
Absolutely.
And we can't. That's real in our industry. There are a lot of people that think like that, and there are a lot of people that have succeeded, and then they lose the client, but no one ever tells that story.
Right, but
they never tell that story. That's what I'm so fascinated with.
That's really interesting.
Like they never tell that.
The client.
Who knows? The media. I don't know who it is, but always there's like this major thing, won all these awards at Cannes, and and then 6 months, a year later, they're like, yeah.
But Paul, here's the thing: you see shades because you come out of improv.
Yes.
This is a binary choice, right?
Yes.
The binary choice is
a great point.
The binary choice is this: they don't like the best idea, then we have to do something dumb. We have to do something direct and boring and sucky and sell our soul and give up.
Yes.
No, because you have basically showed up without taking an order, without sitting down with somebody.
Yes.
Right? Talk to me about the solution.
So the solution is, sorry, we could talk about the problem all day.
It's really fun.
But the solution, it is fun. But the solution, what we realized is I had this exposure to sketch and improv comedy. And what that was an alternative way of generating ideas, alternative way of coming up with ideas and it was based on collaboration. It was based on volume, quantity, sifting through stuff, and not being precious too early.
Right. Oh, right. That's great.
There's a moment to become precious, but I think what I always loved was like we would generate tons of ideas, and we would, much like SNL, where whatever it is that Tuesday where they come in with like 100 scripts to get to that 18.
Yeah.
And that's fine. And the stakes are a little different there. But that was like what I was like always exposed to. And then I always contrasted that with the ad thing, which was sort of just 1 or 2 people in a room. And I just started seeing and then
it's arbitrarily precise.
It's arbitrarily, and then when I meet the client, it becomes this transaction thing, which I think also plays into the scenario. There's people in the room who actually don't know each other.
Right.
And I wanted to try something different. I wanted to try something that was more reflective of the writer room, the improv situation where everyone's collaborating a little bit more, and that included the client. And that included, because I just was like, I had this hunch, was like, what if we brought them in? I actually just thought just to speed it up.
Oh, interesting.
I literally thought it was this time for maybe we can make this a little more efficient.
Right, it's greasing the wheel a little.
And also just being like, okay, so if you see the seeds of ideas you like, tell me and I'll explore those. And if you don't see the ideas, or you see ideas that I shouldn't touch, tell me now. So then I don't become emotionally attached to them.
That's great. Yeah.
And so that was where it started. But then what started happening, there was this realization that a lot of things just opened up for me that I hadn't seen before, which was that the client started bringing their team, which at first I was really nervous about. So when I say bring, we have these things which we call these workshops, where we, as in Funworks people, are there. We bring our clients in, and I tell them, and this is the choke. This is when we were talking about Stacy couldn't be involved until later. We tell the client, no, bring people. And bring people who you think are going to block this, are going to choke this. Who can say no?
Oh, it's such a great day for them, too.
And it's so great. They're nervous, but they're excited.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we bring them in, and then we also bring in this third party, and this was from my background. We bring in these sketch and improv people into the room too. Now, originally I wanted them to help generate the ideas. That sort of has faded. What they really do is
catalytic, right?
Exactly. That's it. They are catalytic, and they help jumpstart. They are used to these group sessions. They built on the premise of yes and.
They like, I can see a good idea. They can see a dead end that's happening.
They can see a dead end, or they can not see a dead end, and they're like, oh, that might be a dead end. Let me build on it.
Well, I'm just saying they see the dead end and they can put a curve in it.
Yes.
That's my point.
Thank you. Sorry, I understand. Yes, that's absolutely right. And then what that then did, when I saw this did the effect on the clients, was they opened up. They started talking about things, anecdotes, stories about their customer,
that's huge too.
about their product. That what you said before didn't fit on that one piece of paper.
No, that cracks open to the juicy stuff too. Like the one time I think that the process was the easiest for me ever was when I got to see a focus group of customers handling the product. I'm like, oh, that's how they feel about this thing. That's what they. And that obviously that's what a planner should be bringing. But to experience it is very different.
But that's the point. There's too many layers right now. There's too much burden on the strategist to convey to you 3 weeks after the focus group.
Right. In words and not
in words. In words.
Yeah.
Which is just so interesting for me to think about this, which is there's just so much deconstruction because I was like, oh, wow. So we want our customers to feel. Why don't we want our clients to feel? And it makes no sense. And if the clients are excited about it, usually the customer, usually their consumer will be.
They definitely are smart. So, okay.
Oh, sorry. So,
all right, so we're in a room.
Yes,
it's the agency, the client, and we've got these improv guys, and like we're just rolling. So, how is this stuff? Who's taking notes?
So this is great. Good questions. You've done research. So well done, Dan. So they, one of the things we stumbled on, there's a couple things before I get to the notes thing.
Sure. I won't forget it.
Yeah. Well, no, it's important. What we realized is there are various limitations and things to brainstorming. We all do it.
Oh, I love this. Yeah.
And we all hate it.
No, it's not productive.
It's really, there are major flaws to it when, especially, how about this casual brainstorming, which everyone thinks they can do.
You know what? I just had this really weird visualization of little pieces of cut grass, like where it's just loose, disconnected snippets.
Yes.
Versus like something a more robust road
and structured and sophisticated and refined. So what happened was initially when we were starting this off of having the comedians, having the clients and ourselves, and we were starting to generate ideas and get insights and find truths faster. And I talked to this woman, Erica, who I had gone to college with and now was actually at a children's museum, specialized in childhood creativity. And she had gone to Stanford and she sort of understood like the patterns of creativity and how the brain works. And she was the one that said to me, we're going back to that quote you read. She was like, I was like, yeah, and it's working, you know? And she's like, everyone's having a good time and people are generating ideas. She's like, oh, well, Paul, that's because you're doing something that tons of neuro researchers are looking into right now. And I was like, come again? And
you're ahead of your time.
And she was just saying, you're creating an atmosphere to increase the odds of finding aha moments.
Absolutely.
She said, so this is sort of the thing. And I was like, oh, she's like, you're creating creative flow, an environment to increase the odds of creative flow happening. And I was like, tell me more about that. And flow is that moment in time when you're not thinking and you're just lost in a moment and you're just doing. And it's a very Zen or whatever, however you want.
This is real as hell.
And we and I was like, oh God, because I know as a writer, I work really hard to find those like 10 minutes of where it feels like that.
Yeah. For me, it's usually pacing.
Yeah.
It's staring at nothing in particular.
And that's where she also then revealed the science of it, which is like, that's why people think of ideas in the shower, on a run.
I always thought that you think of things in the shower, and I guess I need to talk to Erica about this, but I always thought you think of things in the shower on a run because you've put input into your mind and your mind has done the work sort of in the background. And in those moments when you create sort of this, it's almost alpha waves, like this sort of slightly on the edge of consciousness versus unconscious, subconsciousness. Those things kind of bubble up and reveal themselves because the brain has synthesized things.
I think it's that, but then she will connect it to the physical thing that's happening. That there is when you can relax, when you can get to that state, and that's what the shower does, where it lets you zone out, right?
Yes.
It lets you zone out, and then she will talk about running and walking. There's a physical thing that also happens.
I think
helps loosen it up. And then she also says after a beer or two is also like a good state, or a glass of wine. 3 or 4 beers, then different things happen.
I listened to this audio yoga class, and the instructor said that yoga was invented by the Buddhist monks as a way to prepare the body for meditation, to get yourself in that state.
Yes.
Where you're not feeling your fabric of your shirt, or you're thinking that whatever the client and coworker version of a scratchy shirt is.
Yes. You're not thinking. Well, you're also not thinking about what your creative director is going to say about this,
or the clock, or anything.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's what she said. You're creating this atmosphere.
Yeah.
And then what she did.
Can I say one more thing about the atmosphere? I think knowing what I know about young millennials and Gen Z, this is phenomenal way to set up an agency, because it creates a sense of safety that will allow someone who has grown up in a curated experience on the internet to take a risk in a safe, creative space that they are, in my experience, way too worried about what we were talking about earlier, this forced precision.
Yes.
So this is such an enabling concept.
And it's one of these, and this is a big thing, and I would talk to you and students about, I think, the other crystallization I've had, which is there is a difference between creativity and craft.
Oh, yeah.
Everyone has creative potential, including clients.
That's really interesting.
And they're not
how
that...
do you define creative in that context?
That context of like generating ideas, exploring, saying something weird, being able to have the room and the encouragement to use their brain, because that's as like Erica, a lot of clients say they're not creative, and she's like, no, they're just nervous. She's like, they've been a child, and she's the one who's also sort of like, I don't know, maybe their garden is crazy.
That's so interesting.
And then but then Craig always says, right, but we also have to make sure that we draw the line that then there's craft.
Right.
I can take your idea, and now I know how to write it like an ad. I know how to design it.
I think that's amazing.
And then that's what the circus really helps people do, is like improve their creativity and then translate it into craft. And that's like, but the fact that agencies, and I'm so sorry to say this, that agencies had the arrogance to say to clients, and clients feel this, they feel it because I see it, and I've talked to them about it now that I can have these conversations, that agencies said, hey, we know Photoshop, we're creative, you're not. Suggesting that someone is not creative is dehumanizing. As parents, if someone said that to our child, you're not creative, I would destroy them.
It's really interesting.
It's one of the meanest things to say, and clients have been absorbing this for years, decades. And the problem I have with it, it's not true.
That's really interesting.
I don't mind the like, oh, you're doing this for political reasons because you don't want them to do it on their own. I can maybe excuse that, but it's wrong. It's actually just not true.
Right.
They don't know how to do the craft part.
Well, the thing is, an agency is willfully ignoring all of these oil wells right there that they could drill into.
Yes. I mean, this is it. This is exactly what I'm getting to. This has shown me, this workshop process has shown me how much opportunity,
wealth,
intellectual
wealth
that we just close off.
Yeah. That
we just shut down. And these clients have ideas, but more importantly, they tell these stories that can inspire things that we don't have access to.
Just because you don't speak Mandarin doesn't mean Chinese people aren't telling great stories.
Exactly. I mean,
I have no idea what they said. It must not have been good.
No, but the odds are it's probably really good. It's probably really juicy and probably more interesting to me because I don't know them yet.
Right. Wow. So, okay, so I have a practical question for you, because I obviously came up in a very different era of advertising.
Me too.
And I maybe I'm projecting, and I'm sure I'm wrong, but like, is there any pushback from creatives in this process? Is there any sense that like, I don't want to give up that part of it? That's kind of my job. Is there resentment?
So what happened is, I thought that there might be some pushback. And what I saw was that I think creatives that are part of the process do like it. I think creatives that don't know what I'm talking about are very threatened. Just how you're hearing about it.
Maybe you ought to be a better writer or designer then. Maybe you ought to This gets personal for me as an instructor at a school where not all the writers are very good writers. Not all the art directors are very good designers, and I feel like
not to mention you deal with them when they're young, so it takes a while.
Obviously, they're going to develop.
Yeah.
But in a world where craft has become secondary to content, I do have a little bit of a fear of creatives not realizing that the thing that's going to drip value into their savings account for the rest of their lives is their ability to manipulate language and typography. That to me is so important because, like you said, I think what you're basically talking about is the commoditization and democratization of idea generation. And I think basically what you've basically done is opened an entire new oil field or solar panel farm.
Yeah.
To harvest thoughts, and then how they're crafted, it still falls on us as creatives.
Absolutely,
right?
But what I've done, I'm hoping I'm helping the creatives because the idea is I'm hoping that you can skip those 2 weeks of the blank page.
Plus, you're bringing farm to table ingredients to cook from.
Absolutely, yes. I mean,
I've way too many analogies.
No, I love it. This is good. That's why you're a good writer. So that's why it's in trying to increase the odds of like finding more things. And I think now in hindsight, I feel terrible that as a creative director, my job, like I think of all those years at Goodby where teams would come in and I would say the awful thing. I would try my best and be like, oh, maybe think of this and this. And then ultimately I just keep going, which is just, I now realize I should have, now that I know all these exercises that Erica has told us about, and so that the workshop is not just a big, loud yelling match, because that's socially uncomfortable too. It's more like all these exercises of breaking people up in one-on-one, in little teams, and then drawing ideas and interpreting strategy, and that there are different strategies, and let's see which ones are fertile.
I love that.
Yeah, it's.
I wish I were 25 years younger working for you.
Yeah, it's really fun, but it helps people. It really helps people because then, like, kind of that oil field. I love that notion. And so then, going back to the capturing thing, that's why we have this graphic recorder. So a graphic recorder. If anyone's been to a conference, I'm sure they've maybe seen someone who takes notes visually of someone talking. And what we do is we want to make sure that people are free to just come up with ideas and there's someone just taking notes, but is a professional.
Yeah, okay.
Not just someone with a pen writing things on a board. It's too much of a burden. They draw and write notes, and so that there's a visualization attachment to the idea or to the ideas, so that the brain works. We're visual species. We all know this in advertising. But we don't practice it when we're generating ideas. So that we can remember ideas and connect the emotion we had to them.
Great. So what ultimately gets... What can you go back and look at? What does it look like? Is it like
oh my God, it's usually hundreds of ideas.
That's cool. But in what form? I'm just curious.
So there's a couple of...
online? Are they digital scanned photos?
Ultimately, they're digital scanned photos. Okay. So then what we have is this workshop. Yeah. What's really important, so what we do is we have the workshop, we bring the Funworks people in, we bring the comedian / consumer, because really that's what the comedians are.
Oh, yeah.
They're the voice of the consumer.
They're bullshit. Sniffers.
Right. It's the best. Right. And honestly, that's why the sketch and improv people, they're collaborators. They inherently want to figure this out. I say that differently than stand-ups who have like a sort of different sort of profile and a more survival of the fittest attitude, different. Which they have to.
Yeah.
These people are more like they want to work. So with each other and with the clients, I think what happens is they're just like inquisitive. They're curious. They're like, okay, so can you just explain it? This is the best because they represent the consumer. They ask the client. Like I've seen it like 1,000 times now. We're like, wait, could you just explain it to me one more time? Whether it's the product or the differentiator or whatever it is. And the client's on the spot. Because they're not talking to a marketer. I love that. They're not talking to an agency person. They're talking to someone who could be in the elevator. And so then what they do, and I have to give the clients credit, 9 times out of 10, because they've been loosened up. They feel they're in a different space. they will answer the question simply. And they say one thing. And they're like, well, it's basically this. Da-da-da. And when they get that confirmation from that comedian or consumer, and like, oh, that's cool. I'm watching, and everyone in the room is watching. And everyone knows, that's interesting. You didn't mention the 6 other bullet points.
Absolutely. 100%.
You've figured out what's important.
Yep.
I didn't tell, I'm not shoving that down your throat.
Yep. 100%.
And there's not a,
Yep.
and they know it.
Just went through this with Lisa, my wife. She's starting a new business, and she's got this mission statement and all this. And I said, wait a minute, what are you doing? What is it? She's like, what do you mean? I said, what is the point? What is it? What are you doing? She just will say it without thinking. I'm like, write that down.
And that's hard. And that's hard for clients. They're not in that world.
Mm-hmm.
They're in a world that needs to get budget approvals. They need to get all this stuff. So
they use PowerPoint.
And they use PowerPoint.
They use the whole
suite.
All right, so two final questions.
Okay.
I know you're on your way out, and thank you so much for this.
This is thank you for. I love talking to you about this because you've lived this.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, and I know you have this new perspective on what a younger generation.
I think this
what their capabilities are, how they can help change this industry for the better.
I think it's profound. I think this is more profound even than you think it is. All right. So what personal trait of yours, what is it about Paul Charney that's served you well so far in your career? Because you've had a great career.
It's been a fun run. I've been really, like I said, with the BlackRock and
I didn't even mention 2 years at Apple.
Oh, that was weird. Yeah.
10 years at I don't even know what Killing My
So
Lobster.
that was the sketch comedy group I started.
Oh, awesome. And then
so,
AVB, Goodby, and now and then you had your own place, and then Funworks. So what personal trait of yours? What is it about you that has been valuable for you?
I think having a sense of humor.
That's huge.
You know, so that it humor is ultimately. I think you were hitting on it. I think it's perspective.
Oh, interesting.
Like, I think humor
helps you in your marriage.
And it's that old thing. If you can't laugh at this,
right,
we're in big trouble.
Right, it's great. It's a great smile.
Yeah.
All right. So, and then knowing what you know now, if you could go back to the day you walked out of Brown, what would you whisper in young Paul's ear?
I would tell him. That's a really good question. Oh, I know what I would tell him. Figure it out. When you get there, figure out how you can buy any place in San Francisco.
The minute you get there, figure out how you can buy it.
Just figure out, talk to your parents into it, tell them it's going to be worth it. Okay. Just borrow the money, beg, borrow, steal. Just get that down payment on a place.
Okay, old Paul. I'll do that.
Yeah.
Okay, older Paul told me to do that.
Older Paul.
I don't know why all of a sudden you're a working class New Yorker from Brooklyn, but that's where you are in this scenario.
Yes.
That's in this scenario.
Buy SF real estate.
Thank you so much again for talking.
Oh my God, this is so fun. I'm sorry I can't stay longer. This is
we could do another hour. Listeners, check out howfunworks.com, and you can reach Paul at howfunworks.com. You can always reach me at danspodcast@mac.com. Try to just search look for the AdAge article on Funworks and go watch that spot. I should have already put it on the Facebook page for your own viewing pleasure. It's facebook.com/DGMS podcast. You can reach me as always. You know it by now, danspodcast@mac.com. And this is just, I'm just inspired and fired up. Thank you again so much, man.
You should come. I think it'd be fun. Well, hopefully something happens here in Atlanta with maybe a client or something, so that you can come to the workshop.
Oh, I would love it.
I would love to have you check one of these things out.
Awesome. That'd be awesome. In the meantime, thank you so much.
Oh, absolutely.
Listeners, thank you guys. See you again in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.